I want to bring in now Katherine Ramsland. Dr. Ramsland, she is a forensic psychologist and author of several books, including The Serial Killer's Apprentice, How Houston's Deadliest Murderer Turned a Kid into a Killing Machine. It's always nice to see Dr. Ramsland. I think she's basically written more books. Every time we introduce you, it's like a different book. You've written more books than anybody else, and they're all fabulous. But I want to ask you about what Rex Heuermann said in court. Unexpected, hasn't spoken out before, and said, I'm not guilty. Does it surprise you he chose today to just sort of blurt that out?
Well, I think he's been frustrated with not being able to say anything because I think he has confidence in his ability to persuade and manipulate, and he wants people to see that he's confident because charges are piling up and he hasn't had a chance to say anything yet.
Yeah, and what Laura was describing, the sort of planning document that they found on the computer, hundreds of pages of specific plans, and the fact that Heuermann cut off this new victim, Mack's right leg, with her son's name tattooed on it to prevent identification. What does that tell you? I mean, to me, I think about there was real planning involved, I guess.
There's planning involved, but he's also reading books of how other people have done this to erase identifiers. And his planning document is also a journal of mistakes he's either made or he anticipates he could make if he's not careful. So it's a checklist, but it's also about make sure the rope is thick because thin rope breaks, get a lot of sleep because if you're tired, you can't do this as long as you want to. So he has a lot of instructions to himself that are based on the potential for making mistakes.
So do you think he was just writing those things for himself, like for himself to go back over and read, or do you think he wanted to like send that out at some point to other people?
Oh, that's a good question. I do kind of think there might be another person or more involved, or at least have knowledge of this. But it wouldn't surprise me that it's just a list for him because I've seen that before with other killers where they do keep checklists, they keep documentation, they read it over because it not only keeps them prepared, but reminds them of what they've achieved.
And this latest victim found at a dump site, that's what he called it, the dump site, same area as most of the other victims. What does that tell you? I mean, I would just think if he was trying to cover it up, wouldn't you spread the victims to different places? But he's taking them all to the same place.
It's not entirely the same place, and he's treating them a bit differently, but it's about minimum effort and maximum protection. So he wants to be able to visit them potentially or know where they are, but he needs to hide them. He needs to carry them. And so he's going to be choosing places that he thinks will protect him, will hide the victims, but is not going to require a lot of effort on his part.
And I mean, all the details are disturbing, but something about the torture porn sort of takes it to the next level. Apparently he was looking at the torture porn and carried it out on Valerie Mack. What does that mean? I mean, was he getting ideas from the torture porn? I mean, have you seen this in other cases?
Well, it starts with fantasy, his own fantasy. He finds porn that matches it and gives him new ideas. It's called decorating his fantasy with things maybe he hadn't thought of, but he likes and he wants to try. And the more he does that, the more he wants to actually do this to somebody because he wants to experience the feeling of domination and control over another person. He wants to see their suffering. He wants to hear them scream. Because that's what he's reading about, and it's what he wants himself to do based on his own fantasy life.
You've covered so many of these killers. You know, I'm just thinking today he's in court saying not guilty. Do you think he'll stick with that? I mean, at some point, is there a thrill for them to come clean and sort of own up to what they did, or how do you see that part of it playing out?
Yeah, there is a tipping point for some of them where they realize the evidence is so strong, and maybe their family is trying to get them to please just plead this out and be done with it. And then they'll want to talk about it. They'll want to brag. They'll want to make sure they get credit for everything. But we haven't reached that tipping point with him yet.
Yeah, we still don't know if there's more victims too, which is going to be sad to follow. Dr. Ramsland, it's always nice to see you. Thank you for coming on tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your screen. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.